You are listening to the Atlanta Sports Podcast, the only podcast covering all of your teams. Bringing you the best sports news from the state of Georgia, from the professional ranks to the high school levels, we have it all. We are now joined by Lee Miller, owner of Elite Hoops Basketball, the largest Nike basketball camp company in the Southeast. Lee, thanks for joining us once again today.
Sure thing. I appreciate you guys having me back on. Great time of year, March Madness. It's great for everybody in the United States, but definitely anybody involved in the game of basketball like myself.
So we're going to start off. Do you have any disagreements with the way the bracket shook out, the way the selection committee put it yesterday?
But by and large, I think they did an average job in terms of what they normally do. Every year, I'm sure you can find some things that they mess with. But realistically, at the end of the day, I think the teams that will be in the Elite Eight are really what I look at. Did they get the right seeds, or are they within one? So that's pretty much been the way I look at the tournament and decide whether they did the right job. And again, do the top 8 teams, are they within a seed of where they should be? And looking at the brackets, I think everybody is. So, all in all, I think it's a pretty good job. I'd probably give them a B+ or an A- for overall seeding.
What do you think about Syracuse getting left out of the tournament? They were on the bubble at the end. What do you think of them not making the tournament?
I actually sort of like that move by the committee. Typically, for years, for the past 20 years or so, before the past couple of years, those big teams always got the nod ahead of some mid-major schools. And I've watched Syracuse probably 4 or 5 times this year, and just not a big fan of the way they're playing. In the ACC, obviously the ACC is an unbelievable conference and has added more teams, but just not a fan of the way they played this year and their sort of their resume, I guess. So I think it's a good decision. I probably wouldn't have put them in with a little bit of bias on my end, but I think it's the right call. Give some of these mid-majors, a chance to really deserve it and that have proved themselves in their own little conferences.
What region do you think is the toughest from top to bottom?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've seen some people say almost every region, depending on where they're from. But I think from top to bottom, I would probably have to go with the South. When I went through the bracket, obviously, having North Carolina as the number 1, they're playing unbelievable basketball. Obviously they had some hiccups in the ACC tournament, but then when you look at Kentucky, I mean, they're just completely on fire right now, just annihilating opponents, and some of their freshmen are doing some big time things in the SEC tournament, and that'll carry over obviously in the NCAA tournament. They could have been a 1 seed. There wasn't a lot of argument for it, but just the way they're playing right now, you even go to the next line when you have UCLA. I mean, when you have a freshman like Lonzo Ball, we've all seen over the past 20 years or so that sometimes freshmen can do some amazing things. So you got them, and as you go through, Arkansas has been playing really well in the SEC tournament. I like the way they played. So overall, from top to bottom, if you had to match up everybody from every other region, I would have to do hands down it's South from my perspective. But North Carolina, Kentucky, and UCLA at the top, those top 3 teams, I think, are better than any other top 3 teams.
So if North Carolina has maybe the toughest road as the top seed, who has the easiest road of the top seeds? There's Villanova, Kansas, Gonzaga, North Carolina. Which one has the clearest path to the Final Four?
You know what? I'm going to take that one step because I think I'm really looking at that West bracket, and Gonzaga just hasn't proven themselves. I won't say this year, but just I've chosen them so many times to go to the Elite Eight and the Final Four, and so if you take them out, and I have them losing to Notre Dame, I think Arizona. Although they're a number 2 seed, I think they have the easiest path by far. I really didn't think that Florida State was deserving of a 3 seed. I had Xavier over Maryland as an 11-6, and some of the things that I think are going to play out, like I said, with Notre Dame beating Gonzaga there in the Sweet 16. I really see Arizona as sort of having the clearest path. But to be more specific, if there was someone, I think Villanova has a really tough path. Obviously, Duke, people are arguing all day long that they could have been a number 1 seed. Florida's turns it on at the end of the year, and Villanova might have they might be able to beat Virginia Tech, and I have Virginia Tech over Wisconsin. But I just love the way Buzz Williams' team's playing. Yeah, they just have such a camaraderie with each other, such good team bonding, and they just play really, really well. So although Villanova might win that game, a lot's going to be taken out of them, and I think Buzz is going to expose some of their flaws. So, Villanova, if you're truly looking at the ones, I think does have a pretty tough bracket. But if you can sort of say who of those top two lines would take it, I think Arizona has by far the easiest bracket out there in the West.
So you mentioned Duke arguably being a number 1 seed. What do you think about them getting that number 2?
Look, that's a tough one. There was arguments. I think literally you could argue back and forth. The surprising thing to me that I did hear was that they were I believe the lowest. Didn't they say they were the lowest number 2? Is that what you guys heard?
I think it is.
Yes, yeah, that's what's surprising to me. I mean, I definitely wouldn't have them as the 8th overall team, just the way they're playing. And you guys know as well as I do that when you get into this time of year, it's really the team that's hot. We've seen a lot of runs over the past 4 and 5 years of teams that just sort of caught on. It might only be a 21-hit team, but they just catch on fire, into their conference tournament or that first weekend of the tournament. So I think you can argue back and forth at the end of the day, again, whether they're the 1 or whether they're 2. But, if you have if you have the number 2 seed and you're playing a 15 in the first round, I really don't think that you have too much of an argument, especially with them putting Duke in the East. I think that obviously helps them out in the locations that they'll be playing. So, while I think they were deserving of a 1, I don't see anything wrong with giving them a 2 seed, but definitely not deserving of a 3 seed. So that's one of those ones I think they made a pretty good call on.
Is there one upset you would pick right now, or any dark horse teams making a run and winning a few games in a row?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. Obviously, there's always the 12-5 that everybody talks about. So obviously, you look for one of those. And the ones that really intrigues me the most is the way Kermit Davis has his Middle Tennessee State University team playing. I just love the way they ended the season. Obviously, they're a mid-major team, but he's experienced. He's been there before. He's been to so many big games and had big games, in the regular season, obviously in conference tournaments, and then in the NCAA. He's got a couple JUCO transfers and a couple really good freshmen and sophomore on the team. So it really wouldn't surprise me. And in fact, I actually have Middle Tennessee over Minnesota in that first round, and then I have. This might sound surprising, but I actually have Winthrop beating Butler on the other side right there. So in that second round or the second day matchup, I have Middle Tennessee playing Winthrop, a 12-13 matchup. And I think, memory serves me, I think that's only happened like 3 times in the NCAA tournament. So I have both of those. Making a little bit further of a run than maybe that you would think is Notre Dame. I have Notre Dame beating Princeton at the normal 5-12, but then I have them beating West Virginia, and ultimately I have them taking out Gonzaga. They've been playing well. They've been battle-tested, obviously, in the ACC, and I think things like that are very important when they're facing a team like Gonzaga, who hasn't faced nearly the competition that they have. So, yeah, I have Middle Tennessee as a 12 winning, Winthrop as a 13, and then I have Notre Dame as a 5 seed, but I have them going and beating Gonzaga.
The state of Georgia was left out of the NCAA tournament again. So what do you think it will take to fix this issue?
Well, guys, it's that's a year in question that happens. Obviously, Mark Fox has got that program to a spot that's very consistent up there, but they just haven't brought in that next level of talent, nor have they won those really big games that they need to win in order to get to that. That seed, even if you're talking like a 7 or 10 seed coming out of the SEC. And I think this is probably the one of the years that Georgia could have done it. The SEC obviously improved over their performance last year, but I think it could have been easily done with another player or two or another win or two, against a major opponent. Georgia Tech, I think Coach Pastner's headed in the right direction down there. He's obviously done an unbelievable job on the recruiting trail. I've seen him out numerous times, at high school games and in our workouts. Him and his staff do an unbelievable job. The tough thing for them is that they're in the ACC, and I think even a good year for Tech would be coming 7th in the ACC. I mean, you look at all the storied programs that are in the ACC. That there's 4 or 5 of them that are going to be 1 through 4 every year, and I really think Tech is sort of that next tier of just fighting for it. So it'll be tough for them and to get in the NCAA tournament anytime in the next couple of years. And then Georgia State down there with Ron Hunter, I think he's obviously done an amazing job. Obviously, when he lost his son 2 years ago, That was a big part of their NCAA tournament run. But with some of the guys that he's been bringing in, like DeMarcus Simmons, he's done amazing things for the program. And it really wouldn't surprise me if next year they're one of those 12 or 13 seeds that has an upset. He's doing the right thing down there and recruiting the right players. So if you had to ask me next year, Georgia Tech probably not. Georgia 50-50, and I would give a much higher chance to Georgia State down there with Coach Hunter's program.
So while all the teams got shut out of the big bracket, Georgia and Georgia Tech both made the NIT tournament. What do you think that means to both the Bulldogs and the Yellow Jackets? Is it still something that's worth playing for?
Yeah, it's definitely worth playing for. I think there's a letdown, and I've obviously been a part of that before. When you have a letdown, whether it's at the end of the season and you realize you're not making it, or it's even Selection Sunday and you're right there in the bubble and you don't get in. I've been in those instances before. So I think while it's disappointing, as soon as you get that matchup for whether it's the CBI or the NIT, as soon as you get that matchup and call, anybody who's a serious basketball player or coach, they get excited about playing another tournament, whether, again, it's one of the second tier tournaments or it's NCAA. So I think for them, it's really important that they put focus on that first game, not thinking about the NCAA tournament, just focus on the NIT, and realize that it's an opportunity for the team to practice for an extra week, get some extra run in, and obviously prove themselves against some pretty quality opponents.
How much fun would a Georgia Tech matchup in the second round? How much fun would that be? And do you see that happening?
You know what? I haven't studied. To be honest with you, I haven't studied the NIT bracket as much as I should. Who does Georgia Tech even have in that first round matchup?
Georgia Tech plays Indiana in Atlanta, and Georgia plays Belmont at home in Athens.
That's right. So I think when I read about the Georgia Tech thing being moved down here, obviously that's a huge change to have a home game. So if the game was at Indiana, I see Indiana winning by close to double figures. I'm not sure moving it down here gives it enough for Georgia Tech, but obviously playing a home game, Indiana's not going to travel well, especially when it's that late of a decision for the game. I see Georgia winning at home against Belmont, but I tell you what, I went to a Belmont practice this year and saw Coach Bird's team up there, and the way they practice and the way they shoot the ball and hand the ball, they can really give Georgia some problems. I think the key for Georgia there is keeping it a low-scoring game. I think if the score is 60 or above, maybe 62 or above, I'm giving Belmont the advantage. Georgia really wants to grind it out and use that clock like they did in that last game against Kentucky. Although that's not the type of basketball I prefer to watch, I think the best case scenario for them is to keep the game in the high 50s, low 60s. Then they can pull it out. And Georgia Tech really doesn't have a large room, much room for error in their game. I see them probably, losing realistically right now by 4 or 5 points. But again, it's a home crowd. Georgia Tech has been playing pretty good basketball throughout the ACC, a lot better than people thought. So I see Georgia advancing. I do not see Georgia Tech. But to answer your question, if they both played each other, that would be awesome.
So who are some elite hoops basketball players playing in the tournament?
Oh, there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them. Obviously, I'm on a ton of different teams out there. So the tough thing for us is that sometimes when these guys play each other, it's figuring out who to root for. So a lot of times, what we actually do is root for the players as opposed to the game. If we have two people matched up against each other. The one I'm really excited to see is Isaiah Wilkins. He's a local product, as you guys know, out of Norcross here. Went to Greater Atlanta Christian. His Virginia squad's playing UNC Wilmington in that first round matchup. I see them advancing there, and they'll have a really tough matchup in that next round against Florida. So that'll be impressive for him to see. But yeah, that's one of the things that I love to do every year is watch some of our players that we've trained here in Metro Atlanta, see them in the NCAA tournament, see how far they can go. One of the best experiences I had is when one of our players, Avery Jukes, who was at Butler, had a chance to participate in that championship game when Coach Stevens was coaching there at Butler. So just a magical time. I think it's aptly named March Madness, and I'm just really excited for the games to start tomorrow night.
What is your favorite March Madness memory? Through the years, there's been a lot of moments in the NCAA tournament that have been remembered by fans. What's been your favorite?
Man, that ending for the Villanova game last year, that has to go down. I'm a huge Jay Wright fan, huge Villanova fan. I just love the way he runs his offense and his schemes. Been a big fan of his for a number of years, and that was just an amazing game. Just to go back on what I talked on a few minutes ago, that shot that Gordon Hayward had from midcourt that just rimmed out against Duke for another championship game a couple of years ago. That was an amazing one. So over the past, I guess, 8 years or so, there's been some really close games. And that Thursday, something funny, fellas, is I have not worked on that Thursday since I graduated college. That's been one of the days that I take off every year. It's just such a magical day. It's such a fun day. Usually go to a sports bar and sit there and watch a couple games and head home later in the evening and watch them there. It's just that first Thursday, I really don't think that there's anything better than that Thursday of basketball. It's just such a neat thing to be a part of. So yeah, we're really excited to see the Tuesday night, the first four, but really excited for that 12:20 game there on Thursday afternoon.
Do you have a Final Four prediction yet?
Typically I wait until the very last minute because there's been some crazy things that have happened over the years, with some suspensions, with players getting injured at the last minute, coaching things that happen, So usually I try to wait until, really that last minute on Tuesday to come up with my predictions. But, if you're putting me to the fire right now, I really think out of the East, that Villanova Duke one, I can sit there and stare at that one all day long. But I think Villanova just has a little bit more experience, when they match up against some of the young guns of Duke. So I really see Villanova coming out of there. And as I mentioned earlier, out of the West, I really like Arizona. I think they have a fairly easy path coming through there with a second-round matchup against St. Mary's or VCU. And I see them definitely coming out of the West. In that Midwest, Kansas obviously got upset in that early part of their tournament. So while I like the way they play, I just really like the way that Louisville's played. But then I see that they're playing in Oregon, or possibly playing closer to Oregon. And Oregon, man, I think that they're a scary team. Oregon's a really scary team that the chance of them winning the overall tournament isn't huge, but I really think that they can go on a run. So I have Oregon coming out of that Midwest as a 3 seed. And then when you look down the South, as we talked a few minutes ago, with UCLA, Kentucky, and North Carolina, those are by far the 3 best teams coming out. But I think I'm going to have to go with UNC out of there. So I got Villanova as the 1, I got Arizona as a 2, I got Oregon as a 3, and I got UNC as a 1 coming out of there.
And then where can fans find you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on Snapchat, Twitter, and Instagram, and they are all at Lee Miller Elite. LeeMillerElite.
All right, Lee, thanks for joining us today, and we hope to talk to you again sometime soon.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on, and look forward to hopefully talking sometime later in the tournament.